My husband hit me in plain sight of his mother, but her response changed the way I saw them both forever. We were at his childhood home for Sunday dinner, the kind of meal his mother insisted on every week, where the china was always perfect, and conversation stayed surface-level pleasant. The house itself was a monument to appearances, crystal vases on every surface, photos in silver frames showing a family that never existed, everything polished until it gleamed. The smell of lemon furniture polish mixed with pot roast and something floral that made my head hurt. I'd been married to Derek for 3 years, and in that time, I'd learned to read the warning signs. The tightness around his jaw when I contradicted him in front of others, the way his hand would curl into a fist when I said something he didn't like, the particular silence that fell over him right before he exploded, the way his breathing would change, becoming shallow and controlled. That night, I made a mistake. His mother asked about our plans for children, her voice dripping with that passive-aggressive sweetness she'd perfected over decades. She'd asked the same question 17 times in the past year. I'd kept track in my phone, marking each Sunday dinner with a tally. We'd been trying for months with no success. The negative pregnancy tests that piled up in our bathroom trash, the appointments with specialists who poked and prodded and asked invasive questions, the arguments about whose fault it was. Derek blamed my career stress. I blamed his drinking. Every month, the hope. Every month, the crushing disappointment. And every Sunday, his mother's pointed questions disguised as concern. So when she asked again, leaning forward with that fake smile, I laughed. Not meanly, just nervously. A brief, uncomfortable sound that escaped before I could stop it. The kind of laugh that comes out when you're trying not to cry. Derek's hand connected with my face before I even registered he'd move. The slap echoed in the formal dining room. My cheek burned like fire. The taste of blood filled my mouth where my teeth had cut the inside of my lip. I felt the sting spread across my face, hot and pulsing. My eyes watered involuntarily. For a moment, everything went silent. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to stop ticking. The candles on the table flickered. I waited for his mother to react, to gasp, to defend me, to demand that Derek apologize, to do anything that would acknowledge what had just happened, to call him out, to prove that I hadn't imagined the entire relationship in my head, that violence wasn't acceptable even in this perfect house with its perfect family and perfect Sunday dinners. Instead, she calmly set down her fork. The clink of silver against china was unnaturally loud. She dabbed her mouth with her napkin, the movement precise and practiced. Then she looked directly at me, not at her son, at me. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice as steady as if she'd asked me to pass the salt. My brain couldn't process what I'd just heard. I touched my throbbing cheek, felt the heat radiating from my skin. My fingertips came away with a small smear of blood, tasted copper on my tongue. "Excuse me? What did you do to provoke him?" she repeated, enunciating each word carefully. Derek doesn't just lash out for no reason. He was raised better than that. I made sure of it. I raised a gentleman. I stared at her, then at Derek. He'd already returned to cutting his roast beef, completely calm, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just struck his wife across the face hard enough to split my lip and make my ear ring. The knife scraped against his plate with each precise cut. He even reached for his wineglass and took a sip. "I didn't," I started, my voice shaking. "I just laughed. I didn't mean anything by it. It was nervous. I'm sorry." The apology came automatically. I hated myself for it, even as the words left my mouth. "You embarrassed him," his mother said, her tone instructional, patient even, like she was teaching me something important, like she was doing me a favor. In his own mother's home, during a family meal, what did you expect? Men have pride. They need respect, especially in front of their family. My mother taught me that, and I'm teaching you. Something inside me cracked open. This wasn't the first time Derek had hit me. It was just the first time anyone else had witnessed it. I'd told myself for months that if it ever happened in front of someone, they'd help me. They'd see the truth. They'd intervene. Someone would finally prove to me that I wasn't crazy for thinking this wasn't normal, that I wasn't overreacting, that I deserved better. But his mother wasn't horrified. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't even surprised. She was annoyed with me, irritated that I'd disrupted her dinner party, that I'd made her son lose control in front of her. That's when I understood. This wasn't new behavior Derek had developed after we got married. This wasn't stress from work or disappointment about the baby situation or financial pressure. This was learned behavior, inherited, passed down like the family silver and the china cabinet and the grandfather clock. The way his father used to grab his mother's wrist too tightly at family gatherings suddenly made sense. The way she'd flinch and then immediately smile like the pain had never registered. The way she'd always blamed herself whenever his father's temper flared. The high collars and long sleeves even in summer. The makeup that was always just a shade too heavy on certain days. The way she'd changed the subject whenever anyone asked if she was okay. She'd raised him to do this. And she expected me to accept it the way she had. To smile through it, to apologize, to ask what I'd done wrong, to make myself smaller, to never laugh at the wrong time again. The realization hit me like ice water. This woman sitting across from me, perfectly coiffed and poised, had spent decades training her son to treat his wife the same way his father had treated her. She'd normalized violence, made it acceptable, made it my fault, and now she was trying to do the same thing to me. I stood up from the table, my legs shaking. My chair scraped against the floor. "Where are you going?" Derek asked, his voice casual, almost bored, like I was being unreasonable by leaving the table before dessert. His mother had made her famous apple pie, Home, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded distant, hollow. We're not finished with dinner, his mother said. She gestured to my still full plate. Sit down. We haven't even had dessert yet. I made your favorite. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was wearing a high-necked blouse despite the summer heat, long sleeves that buttoned at the wrist, a scarf tied decoratively around her neck. I'd never questioned it before. I'd thought it was just her style, formal, old-fashioned. Now I saw it for what it was, camouflage. How long? I asked. She blinked, her perfect composure slipping for just a second. What? How long did his father hit you before you started making excuses for it? The color drained from her face. Her hand went to her throat, touching the scarf. Derek stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Don't you dare speak to my mother like that, he said, his voice low and dangerous. I turned to face him, and for the first time since we'd met, I wasn't afraid. Something had shifted inside me. I was done being afraid, done apologizing, done making myself smaller. Or what? You'll hit me again? In front of her? She'll just blame me anyway. She'll ask what I did to deserve it. Just like she's been asking herself for 30 years. His jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. You're always so dramatic. It was one slap. You're acting like I beat you. I'm being honest, I said, and I'm leaving, right now. I walked toward the door. Derek followed me, his footsteps heavy behind me. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my bicep hard enough to leave bruises. I knew because I'd seen the finger-shaped marks before. You're not going anywhere, he said. We're going to finish dinner like adults. Then we're going to go home and forget this happened. His mother appeared in the doorway, blocking my exit. She'd moved quickly for someone her age. Her face was pale but composed. You're overreacting, she said. This is what marriage is. You work through difficulties. You don't just run away the moment things get hard. Marriage is a commitment, a vow, for better or worse. My generation understood that. He hit me, I said slowly, enunciating each word. In your dining room, and you asked what I did wrong. You blamed me for being hit. Do you hear yourself? Because there are always two sides, she replied, her voice taking on a desperate edge. My husband had his moments, yes, but I learned to be better, to support him, to not push his buttons, to be a proper wife. That's what wives do. We make sacrifices. We keep the peace. We keep our families together. Something in her eyes looked desperate now, pleading. She needed me to agree with her, to validate the decades she'd spent telling herself that her husband's violence was somehow her fault, that she'd deserved it, that she could have prevented it if only she'd been better, if only she'd been perfect. If I left, if I refused to accept this, then what did that say about her choices? About the life she'd lived? About the decades she'd spent hiding bruises and making excuses? I'm sorry, I said quietly, and I meant it. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry no one helped you. I'm sorry you were taught that love looks like this. But I'm not staying. I'm not doing what you did. Derek's grip on my arm tightened until I felt my bones grinding together. Pain shot up to my shoulder. You're making a scene, he hissed into my ear. His breath was hot against my neck. You're embarrassing me, embarrassing us. Good, I said. Let everyone see exactly who you are. Let everyone see what happens in this perfect house with your perfect family. I wrenched my arm free and shoved past his mother. She reached for me, her hand catching my sleeve. You'll regret this, she said, her voice shrill now, all composure gone. You'll never find another man willing to put up with your attitude, with your career, with your independence. Derek put up with all of that. He gave you everything. He gave me bruises, I said, and you gave him permission. I drove home that night with my hands shaking so badly I almost pulled over twice. My face throbbed. My arm ached. But something else was happening too. Something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. I started packing the moment I walked through the door. Not just a suitcase. Everything. Every book. Every photo. Every piece of clothing. I worked methodically, room by room. I called my sister, who lived 2 states away. She answered on the first ring. Come home, she said immediately when I told her what happened. Pack everything and come home. Right now. Tonight. I'd moved away for Derek. Left my job. Left my friends. Left everything familiar because he'd gotten a promotion and we'd decided it made sense. Or rather, he decided and I'd agreed, because that's what I always did. I emptied our joint bank account. Exactly half, down to the cent. I opened a new one at a different bank using my maiden name. I took photos of my split lip, my bruised arm, my swollen cheek. I found the photos I'd hidden from previous incidents. The ones I'd taken and deleted and restored from cloud backup. The journal entries I'd written at 2 a.m. after he'd shoved me against a wall. The text to my sister where I'd made excuses for him. Screenshots of his angry messages. Evidence. I was gathering evidence. Derek came home 3 hours later and found half the apartment empty. I'd worked fast, loading boxes into my car with adrenaline-fueled efficiency. My sister had stayed on the phone with me the whole time, talking me through the panic, reminding me to breathe, to keep moving. What the hell are you doing? He demanded, standing in the doorway of our bedroom. Leaving, I said. I didn't look up from packing, just kept folding, rolling socks, methodical. He laughed, a short, sharp sound that made my skin crawl. You're not leaving, you're just being emotional. Tomorrow you'll realize you overreacted. You always do this. You get upset and threaten to leave and then you calm down. This is just another one of your episodes. I kept packing, folding shirts, rolling socks, wrapping picture frames in newspaper, methodical. His tone changed, became softer. The voice he used when he wanted something. The voice that used to make me melt. The voice that had convinced me to forgive him every other time. Baby, come on, I'm sorry, okay? I shouldn't have lost my temper. I know that. But my mother was right. You know how sensitive I am about the baby thing. It hurts me too. Every month, every negative test. And you laughed. You laughed about our pain. I zipped up my suitcase and faced him. Your mother taught you that hitting me is my fault. That's not sensitivity. That's abuse. And I'm done. I'm done making excuses. I'm done walking on eggshells. I'm done apologizing for existing. His expression shifted again. The mask dropped. Cold now. Calculating. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. I'll make sure everyone knows you abandoned this marriage, that you gave up on us, that you're unstable. I'll tell them about your anxiety medication, about your therapy, about every embarrassing thing you've ever told me. I'll ruin you. Go ahead, I said. Tell them whatever you want. At least I'll be alive to hear it. Something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe? Or realization that his threats weren't working anymore. You're being dramatic, he said. I've never hurt you that badly. It's not like I put you in the hospital. There shouldn't be a threshold for badly, I said. You shouldn't hurt me at all. Not once. Not ever. I loaded my car while he stood in the doorway, alternating between threats and apologies. The promises to change, the accusations that I was overreacting, the reminders of everything he'd done for me, the loans he'd helped me pay off, the career sacrifices he'd made, the way he'd always been there for me, the ring he'd bought me, the life we'd built together. When I drove away, he was still standing there, looking genuinely confused that I'd actually left, like he couldn't comprehend that his actions had consequences, that I wasn't coming back this time. My sister met me in her driveway at 4 a.m. I'd driven straight through, stopping only for gas and coffee. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. You're safe now, she said. You're safe. He can't hurt you anymore. I slept for 16 hours straight. When I finally woke up, disoriented and confused about where I was, my sister was sitting in a chair by the bed. I made you breakfast, she said. And I'm taking you to see a lawyer today. My phone had 47 missed calls and 89 text messages. Derek, his mother, his father, his sister, friends we'd had as a couple, all demanding to know where I was, asking what was wrong with me, telling me I was tearing apart a family, that I was being selfish, that marriage was hard work, that I needed to grow up, that every couple fought, that I was throwing away years over one incident. I blocked all of them except his sister Patricia. She was the only one who'd sent a different message. I understand why you left. I'm sorry I never said anything. I saw it happening and I said nothing. I was afraid he'd shut me out. I chose him over doing what was right. I'm sorry. If you need anything, call me. My sister helped me file for divorce. She drove me to consultations with 3 different lawyers until we found one who understood, who didn't ask what I'd done to provoke him, who didn't suggest couples counseling, who believed me immediately. We sat with her while she explained the process, how long it would take, what evidence we needed, how to get a restraining order if necessary. Derek tried everything. He sent flowers to my sister's house, dozens of bouquets that arrived daily. The porch looked like someone had died, lilies and roses and carnations that wilted in the heat. He showed up at her door at random hours, pounding and yelling my name. She installed security cameras and called the police twice. He sent letters, long, rambling things that alternated between apologies and threats. He sent gifts, jewelry, books I'd mentioned wanting, a new laptop. He hired a lawyer who painted me as unstable, who brought up my anxiety medication like it was evidence of mental illness, who suggested I'd bruised myself for attention, who claimed I was having an affair and using abuse allegations as a cover, who said I was bitter about the infertility and taking it out on Derek. But I had evidence, photos with timestamps, journal entries dating back 2 years, medical records from the ER visit I'd made after he'd shoved me into a door frame and I'd needed stitches. The testimony of neighbors who'd heard us fighting, who'd heard me crying, who'd seen me with bruises and accepted my excuses about being clumsy. My therapist's records documenting the abuse, text messages where he'd apologized after previous incidents. The judge reviewed everything, looked at the photos, read the journal entries, listened to my testimony, then looked at Derek and asked him directly if he'd ever struck me. Derek hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. The divorce was granted. No contest. I got half of everything. The judge strongly suggested Derek attend anger management classes. When none of the manipulation worked, Derek sent his mother. She appeared at my sister's door one afternoon, perfectly dressed as always. Pearls, coordinated outfit, hair done, makeup flawless. She looked like she was going to lunch at the country club. Can we talk? She asked, her voice gentle, pleading. My sister started to close the door, protective as always, but I stopped her. It's okay, I said. I'll talk to her. I need to hear what she has to say. We sat in my sister's kitchen. She looked uncomfortable, like she'd never been anywhere without matching furniture and proper tea settings. Her hands fidgeted with her purse strap. She kept glancing around like she was judging the decor. Derek is devastated, she began. He loves you. He made a mistake. Just one mistake and you're throwing away years of marriage, years of commitment, the life you built together. He's made many mistakes, I corrected. And you taught him that mistakes like that are acceptable. You taught him that hitting women is normal, that it's our fault when it happens. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Her hand went to her throat again, that reflexive gesture. I came here to ask you to reconsider, she said, her voice tight. For his sake, he needs you. He's falling apart without you. He can't eat, can't sleep. He's a mess. He's losing weight. His work is suffering. What about what I need? I asked. What about my safety? My life? My right to exist without being afraid? What about the fact that I spent 3 years walking on eggshells, never knowing what would set him off? Marriage requires sacrifice, she said automatically. The same line she'd probably told herself 1,000 times. Through black eyes and broken ribs and twisted wrists. The same justification she'd used to stay for decades. Not that kind of sacrifice, I said. You deserved better. You deserved someone who never made you afraid, who never made you wear long sleeves in summer, who never made you apologize for things that weren't your fault, who never made you question your own sanity. And instead of leaving, you stayed and raised a son who thinks violence is normal, who thinks love looks like control. Her hands trembled around her teacup. Tea sloshed over the side, staining the tablecloth. I did my best, she whispered, with what I had, with what I knew. I thought if I taught him properly, if I was strict enough, he'd be better than his father. I thought I could fix what was broken, but you taught him wrong, I said gently. You taught him that hitting is acceptable if the woman provokes it. You taught him that violence is forgivable. That's what your husband taught you, and that's what you passed on. That's the legacy. I know, she said, and started crying. Real tears now. Mascara ran down her cheeks, creating dark streaks. I know. I see it now. Watching you leave. Watching you refuse to accept what I spent my life accepting. You're braver than I ever was. Stronger than I could be. It's not about bravery, I said. It's about survival. And you survived too, in your own way. You did what you had to do to get through each day. But I won't pass this on. I won't let there be another generation that thinks this is love. There won't be another generation, she said bitterly. Not if you leave him. He'll never find another woman willing to marry him now. Not with a divorce on his record. Not with these allegations. Good, I said. Then maybe he'll have to change. Or maybe he'll spend the rest of his life alone, wondering why no one will put up with him. Either way, that's not my problem anymore. What about me? She asked. Her voice cracked. I'll lose my son. He'll blame me for this conversation, for not bringing you back, for not convincing you. He already barely speaks to me. This will destroy what's left of our relationship. Then maybe you'll both learn something, I said. Maybe you'll both finally face what you've been hiding from for decades. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Her composure was cracking, revealing something raw underneath. You're selfish, she said, her voice rising. You're throwing away a good man over one incident. One moment of lost temper. You're ruining his life, his reputation, his career, everything he's worked for, all because you can't forgive one mistake. It wasn't one incident, I said calmly. It was dozens. And even if it had been just once, that's still one time too many. There's no acceptable number of times to hit your wife. Not one. Not ever. She left without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the walkway. That night, she sent me an email, long, rambling, about forgiveness and Christian duty and how divorce was a sin, how her generation had understood commitment, how modern women gave up too easily, how I'd regret this someday when I was old and alone, how Derek would find someone better, someone who appreciated him, someone who understood that men weren't perfect, how I'd end up bitter and alone, wondering what could have been. I never responded. I archived the email and moved on. The divorce took 8 months. Derek dragged it out, fighting over everything. The furniture we'd bought together, the wedding gifts, the shared subscription services, the photos from our honeymoon. His lawyer demanded I pay him alimony because I'd been the higher earner for the first 2 years. They claimed he'd sacrificed his career advancement to support mine, that he'd taken a lower position to accommodate my schedule, that I owed him. We ended up in mediation, sitting across the table from each other with lawyers on either side. Derek looked thinner, older, dark circles under his eye, unshaven. His suit hung loose on his frame. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for him. That was the part that had spent 3 years making excuses. The part that had convinced itself love meant accepting, that everyone lost their temper sometimes, that marriage was about compromise. But then I looked at the fading bruise on, and I felt nothing but relief that I'd never have to sit across from him at breakfast again, never have to watch his mood shift, never have to calculate which version of him I'd be dealing with that day. The mediator split everything down the middle. No alimony for either party. Clean break. Each of us walked away with half of what we'd built, which felt appropriate. I'd given half of myself to that marriage. Now I was taking it back. When we signed the final papers, Derek looked at me across the table. I hope you're happy, he said. His voice dripped with bitterness. I am, I said, and I meant it. For the first time in years, I actually meant it. Are you seeing someone? He asked. Is that what this was really about? This was about you hitting me, I said, and your mother asking what I did to deserve it. Nothing else. After the divorce was finalized, I moved to a new city. Fresh start. New apartment in a neighborhood I'd chosen myself. New job at a nonprofit helping domestic violence survivors. I answered the crisis hotline, helped women find emergency housing, connected them with legal resources, sat with them while they filed police reports, held their hands while they testified, reminded them daily that they deserved better. I saw so many women who reminded me of Derek's mother. Women who'd spent decades convincing themselves that their partner's violence was somehow their responsibility to prevent. Women who believed they could love someone into changing. Women who thought they deserved it, who thought they'd asked for it, who thought there was no way out, who'd been told by their families that marriage meant enduring, that divorce was shameful, that they should try harder. I understood now why Derek's mother had reacted the way she did. Not because she was cruel, but because she was broken. Because acknowledging that Derek was an abuser meant acknowledging that her husband had been one too, that she'd spent her life making excuses for unforgivable behavior, that she'd raised her son in the same pattern, that she could have stopped it and didn't, that she'd chosen denial over truth because the truth was too painful. The guilt would have destroyed her. So she chose denial, chose to believe that violence was normal, that all marriages included it, that love meant enduring pain. 2 years after I left, I got a call from Patricia, Derek's younger sister. We'd never been close, but she'd always been quiet during family gatherings, watching, learning, taking mental notes. "I'm leaving my husband," she said without preamble. Her voice was shaking. "And I wanted to thank you." "For what?" I asked. "For showing me there was another option," she said. "I watched you walk away that night. I saw Derek hit you and watched my mother blame you, and something clicked inside me. I realized I'd been making the same excuses for my husband that my mother made for my father, that I was teaching my daughter that this was normal, that love includes violence if you just provoke someone enough, and I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't let her grow up thinking this was acceptable." We talked for 2 hours. I connected her with resources, gave her the contact information for my divorce attorney, offered to help however I could, told her about the nonprofit, about the shelters, about the legal protections available, about how to document everything, how to plan an exit strategy, how to keep herself and her daughter safe. She called me a month later from a shelter 3 states away. "I left," she said. "I took my daughter and I left in the middle of the night. He doesn't know where we are. I changed our names, got new phones, new bank accounts. My mother is furious with me, says I'm tearing apart the family, that I'm being dramatic, that every marriage has rough patches, that I should go home and work it out, but I can't. I won't." "Does your daughter see you differently now?" I asked. "She smiled at me yesterday," Patricia said, her voice breaking. "Really smiled, for the first time in months. She's not afraid anymore. She's not watching my face to see if I'm upset. She's not calculating what mood he'll be in when he gets home. She's just being a kid again." That same year, Derek's mother called me. It was late, past 11 p.m. Her voice sounded different, smaller, fragile, old. "I need to tell you something," she said. "My husband died last month, heart attack, sudden. And I realized something at his funeral as I stood there looking at his casket." "What?" I asked. "I spent 53 years with a man I was terrified of," she said. 53 years walking on eggshells. 53 years making excuses. And I lost both my children because I taught them his behavior was acceptable. Because I normalized violence. Because I chose to protect him instead of them." She was crying now, openly, messily. "Derek's engaged again," she continued. "To someone younger, 23 years old, fresh out of college. She reminds me of myself at that age. So eager to please. So convinced she can fix him. So desperate to be chosen. And my daughter won't speak to me because I told her she was abandoning her family when she filed for divorce. Because I chose Derek over her. I'm alone now. Completely alone. And I deserve it." I sat with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to her sob. Part of me wanted to hang up, to tell her she'd made her choices and now she had to live with them, that she didn't deserve my sympathy, that she'd enabled her son, that she'd blamed me for being hit. But another part of me remembered sitting across from her at that dining table, remembered the desperation in her eyes, the way she'd needed me to agree with her, to validate her life choices, to tell her she'd done the right thing by staying. "You were right," she whispered. "I did deserve better. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I expected you to accept what I couldn't escape. I wanted you to suffer like I suffered because if you didn't, then what did that say about me? About the years I wasted? About the choices I made? If you could leave and I couldn't, what did that mean?" I sat quiet for a moment, listening to her ragged breathing. "It's not too late," I said finally, "to break the cycle, to tell Derek the truth, to warn that girl what she's getting into, to stop defending what happened to you and to us, to admit that your husband was abusive, that Derek is abusive, that this pattern has to stop." "He won't listen," she said. "He thinks I'm being ridiculous, senile, bitter. He says I'm inventing drama because I miss his father, that his father never hurt me, that I'm imagining things, that I'm trying to sabotage his happiness." "Then warn his fiancée," I said. "Tell her what to expect. Show her your scars. Give her the choice you never had. Let her decide for herself with full information." She was quiet for a long moment. "What if she doesn't believe me?" she asked. "What if she thinks I'm just a bitter old woman trying to sabotage my son's happiness? What if Derek convinces her I'm lying? Then at least you tried," I said. "At least you'll know you did something. At least you'll know you spoke up. That matters." "I'll try," she whispered. "I promise I'll try. It's the least I can do." I never found out if she followed through immediately. But 3 months later, Derek's engagement ended abruptly. Patricia called me, excitement in her voice for the first time since I'd known her. "She left him," Patricia said. "His fiancée, Vanessa. She packed her things and disappeared in the middle of the night. Derek's furious, blaming everyone, blaming Mom especially. Apparently Mom took her out to lunch and told her everything, showed her photos from decades ago, hospital records she'd kept hidden in a safety deposit box, everything she'd buried for 50 years. "Did it help?" I asked. "Your mother doing that?" "She called me," Patricia said, "for the first time in 2 years. Asked about my daughter. Asked if she could visit. Actually listened when I told her no, not yet. She's in therapy now. Actually dealing with her past. She's trying. It's not enough to fix everything, but it's something. It's a start." 3 years after my divorce, I met someone at a coffee shop. His name was Ben. He was a high school teacher, grading papers at a corner table. I spilled my coffee on his jacket accidentally. He laughed it off. We started talking. He was gentle, patient, kind. We dated for 6 months before I told him about Derek, about the marriage, about the violence. I expected him to run, to decide I was too damaged, too complicated. Instead, he said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. It doesn't change how I feel about you. I'm 34 now. I've been with Ben for a year and a half. Someone who's never once raised his voice at me, let alone his hand. Someone who asks permission before touching me, who respects my space, who listens when I talk, who values my opinion. Sometimes I still flinch when he moves too quickly. Old habits die hard. My body remembers even when my mind knows I'm safe. The trauma lives in my nervous system. The first time it happened, we were cooking dinner. Ben had reached for a knife to cut vegetables and I jerked backward, arms up defensively, heart pounding. He'd frozen, hand still outstretched, the knife resting on the cutting board. I would never, he said quietly. His voice was steady, certain. I would cut off my own hands before I hurt you. I need you to know that. I know, I said, trying to calm my racing heart. My brain knows. It's just taking my body longer to catch up. The therapist says it's normal, that it might take years. He didn't make a big deal of it. Didn't make me talk about it before I was ready. Didn't ask invasive questions. Just moved slower after that. Announced when he was reaching for things. Asked permission before touching me. Gave me space when I needed it. Never pressured me. It took months before I stopped flinching at sudden movements. Before I stopped having nightmares where Derek found me. Before I stopped checking locks obsessively before bed. Before I could watch movies with domestic violence scenes without having panic attacks. Before I could hear raised voices without my heart racing. Last month, Derek's mother died. Heart failure. Patricia called to tell me, though I wasn't sure why she thought I needed to know. She left you something, Patricia said. In her will. She wanted you to have it. I didn't want anything from that family. I'd spent years cutting ties, building a new life, creating distance. But curiosity won. It was a letter. Handwritten on stationery that smelled like lavender and mothballs. The paper was expensive, heavy, the kind she'd used for thank you notes. I read it alone in my apartment while Ben waited in the other room, giving me space. It was long, pages and pages of cramped handwriting that got shakier toward the end. She detailed her marriage in ways she'd never spoken about. The first time her husband hit her, how it was on their honeymoon, how she'd convinced herself it wouldn't happen again, that it was stress from the wedding, that he'd been drinking too much, that it was her fault for criticizing the hotel room. She wrote about the years of escalation, the broken bones she'd explained away as accidents, falling downstairs, slipping in the shower, walking into doors, the miscarriages she'd never told anyone about, 3 of them, one after he'd pushed her into a table, the times she'd considered leaving and then convinced herself she couldn't, that she had nowhere to go, that no one would believe her, that her family would disown her, that divorce was shameful, that it was somehow her fault. She wrote about watching Derek grow up, seeing the signs early, the way he'd break his toys when frustrated, throw things when he didn't get his way, the way he'd pushed a girl on the playground and then blamed her for being in his way, how the teachers had called her in for conferences about his behavior, his aggression toward other children, the way she'd made excuses for him, told herself he'd grow out of it, that boys would be boys, that she could teach him better, that if she was strict enough, firm enough, perfect enough, he'd learn control. But she'd taught him the wrong things. She'd taught him that anger was acceptable, that violence could be justified, that women were responsible for managing men's emotions. She'd modeled submission, had shown him that women apologize when men hurt them, that women make themselves smaller, that women accept blame for things that aren't their fault. At the end, she wrote, I was wrong about everything. I thought I could protect myself by being perfect, by never making mistakes, by anticipating every mood shift. I thought I could protect Derek by teaching him control, by showing him what a proper wife looked like. Instead, I taught him that violence was acceptable if justified. I taught him to see women as things to be managed rather than people to be respected. I broke him by trying to fix myself. That's my burden, my sin, and I'll carry it wherever I go next. But you don't have to carry it. You broke the cycle I couldn't break. You saved yourself when I couldn't save myself. And maybe you saved that girl who was going to marry him. Maybe you saved children who will never be born into a house where violence is love. Maybe you changed the trajectory of this entire family. That's my gift to you. Permission to let go. Permission to move forward without guilt. Permission to be happy in a way I never was. Permission to stop wondering if you made the right choice. You did. You absolutely did. Thank you for being braver than I was. Thank you for showing Patricia there was another way. Thank you for refusing to become me. I'm sorry I asked what you did to deserve being hit. You did nothing. You deserved none of it. I know that now. I wish I'd known it then. I cried reading it. Not for her, not for Derek, but for all the versions of myself that had lived in fear. The one who'd made excuses. The one who'd thought love meant enduring. The one who'd believed I deserved it. The one who'd apologized for laughing. The one who'd touched her bleeding face and wondered what she'd done wrong. Ben found me on the floor, surrounded by pages of letter, tears streaming down my face. He sat beside me and waited until I could speak. He didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, just sat with me in the grief. I'm okay, I finally said, wiping my eyes. I'm just mourning something that never existed. A version of that family where love didn't hurt, where women weren't blamed for men's violence, where someone intervened, where someone said it was wrong. He held my hand and didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the right response. That night, I burned the letter in my kitchen sink, watched the pages curl and blacken, watched decades of pain and regret turn to ash, let it all wash down the drain with the water. Patricia calls me every few months. Her daughter is 10 now. She's in therapy, processing what she witnessed before they left. But she's thriving. She plays soccer, has friends, laughs easily, doesn't flinch when her mother moves too quickly. Derek is 40 now, still single, still angry. He's been through 2 more failed engagements. Word travels in small circles. Both women left after his mother warned them, after Patricia warned them, after the pattern became clear. He blames me for ruining his life, for turning his family against him, for making it impossible for him to find love. But I didn't ruin his life. His choices did. His refusal to change did. His insistence that he did nothing wrong did. I'm 36 now. Ben proposed last month. We were hiking, and he stopped at a clearing overlooking the valley, got down on one knee, asked if I'd marry him. I said yes, and I meant it without reservation, without fear, without wondering what version of him I'd be getting. Because with Ben, there's only ever been one version: kind, patient, gentle, consistent. We're planning a small wedding. My sister will be my maid of honor. Patricia asked if she could come, bring her daughter. I said yes. She's family now, the family I chose. Sometimes I think about that dinner, about the moment Derek's hand connected with my face, about his mother asking what I did wrong, about how close I came to accepting that as normal, to staying, to becoming her. And I'm grateful. Not for the violence, never for that, but for the clarity it gave me, the moment I realized I had a choice, that I could leave, that I deserved better. That love shouldn't hurt. I work with women every day who are where I was, trapped in cycles of violence, believing it's their fault, thinking they can't leave, that they have nowhere to go, that no one will believe them, that they deserve it. And I tell them what I wish someone had told me sooner. What Derek's mother finally understood too late. You deserve to be loved without being hurt. You deserve to exist without fear. You deserve to laugh without calculating whether it's safe. You deserve to speak without wondering if your words will trigger violence. You deserve to sleep peacefully without wondering what mood he'll be in tomorrow. And most importantly, it's not your fault. It was never your fault. There's nothing you could have done differently. No way you could have been better or more perfect or more careful that would have stopped the violence. Because the violence was never about you. It was always about him. Last week, I got a letter from Derek, forwarded through 3 different addresses before it reached me. It was different from his previous letters. No threats, no manipulation, no promises to change, just honesty. He wrote that he'd finally started therapy, real therapy, not court-ordered anger management, that he'd had to hit rock bottom first, had to lose everyone, his fiancés, his sister, his mother's respect before she died, his friends, his reputation. He wrote that his therapist made him detail every incident, every time he'd hit me, every time he'd blamed me, every excuse he'd made. And for the first time, he'd had to face it without justification, without being able to spin it as my fault. He wrote, I don't expect forgiveness, I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that you were right, about everything. My mother did teach me that violence was acceptable. I did learn that love looks like control, and I did almost become my father completely. You saved yourself by leaving. And maybe you saved me too by refusing to accept what my mother accepted. I'm trying to change now. Not for you. Not to get you back, but because I don't want to die alone and angry, wondering why everyone left me. I want to be better than my father was. Better than I've been. It's probably too late, but I'm trying. I read it 3 times. Showed it to Ben, to my therapist, to Patricia. Do you believe him? Ben asked. I don't know, I said. And it doesn't matter. Whether he changes or not isn't my responsibility. I did my part by leaving, by refusing to enable him. The rest is up to him. I didn't respond to the letter. I filed it away with all the other evidence from that chapter of my life. The photos, the journal entries, the medical records, everything I keep in case I ever need to remember why I left. Why I chose myself over him, because sometimes, on hard days, I still wonder. I still hear his mother's voice asking what I did wrong. I still feel a flash of guilt for breaking up the family, for ruining Sunday dinners, for causing drama. That's what abuse does. It lives in you long after you leave. It plants doubt, makes you question reality, makes you wonder if maybe you were the problem all along. But then I look at Ben, at the life we're building, at the woman I've become, strong, certain, unafraid, and I remember I didn't break up a family, I broke a cycle, and that's something worth fighting for. Patricia's daughter wrote me a letter last month for a school project about heroes. She wrote, my aunt isn't a superhero. She doesn't have powers or a cape, but she showed my mom that you can leave, that you don't have to stay when someone hurts you. That love isn't supposed to hurt. And because of her, I get to grow up knowing that I deserve better, that my mom deserves better, that we all do. That makes her my hero. I cried reading it. The kind of crying that cleanses, that releases, that celebrates, because she's right. Breaking cycles is heroic work. Walking away when everyone tells you to stay is brave. Choosing yourself when you've been taught to choose everyone else first is revolutionary. I didn't set out to be anyone's hero. I just wanted to survive, to stop being afraid, to build a life where love didn't leave bruises. But maybe that's enough. Maybe surviving and thriving and refusing to pass trauma to the next generation is the most heroic thing any of us can do. Derek's mother understood that at the end. Took her 53 years, but she got there. Warned the women her son tried to trap. Admitted the truth, broke the silence. It wasn't enough to undo the damage. Nothing could undo decades of enabling abuse, of teaching her son that violence was love, of modeling submission. But it was something, a start, a small attempt at redemption. I think about her sometimes. Wonder what her life could have been if someone had told her she could leave, if someone had intervened, if she'd had the resources and support I had, if her generation had understood that divorce wasn't shameful, that staying wasn't always noble, that marriage vows don't mean enduring violence. But she didn't have those things, so she stayed, and taught her children that staying was love, that enduring was strength, that silence was loyalty. And it took me leaving, me refusing, me breaking the pattern, to show her there was another way. I wish I could have saved her too. But you can't save someone who isn't ready to be saved, who hasn't admitted they need saving, who's spent decades building a fortress of justifications and excuses. All you can do is save yourself. and hope that by doing so, you'd light the way for someone. Ben and I are getting married in the spring. Small ceremony, close friends and family only. Patricia and her daughter will be there. My sister, who never stopped believing me. The friends who helped me escape. The coworkers who've become family. Derek won't be invited, obviously, but part of me wonders if he'll show up anyway. If he'll make one last attempt to control the narrative, to play the victim, to convince everyone I'm the villain. But I'm not afraid anymore, because I know the truth. I have the evidence, the witnesses, the scars that tell the real story. And more importantly, I have a life worth protecting now. A future that doesn't include walking on eggshells or hiding bruises or apologizing for existing. That's the gift I gave myself by leaving. Freedom, safety, peace. And that's worth more than any apology Derek could ever offer. More than any changed behavior. More than any promise of redemption. Because I don't need him to change for me to be whole. I don't need his mother's deathbed letter to validate my choice. I don't need anyone's permission to be happy. I already am. And that's the best revenge of all. Not hurting him back, not ruining his life, but building mine so beautifully that his absence doesn't even register. That's what breaking the cycle looks like. Not dramatic, not vengeful, just quiet, steady healing. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of choosing yourself at a time. Until one day you realize you're not just surviving anymore. You're thriving. You're laughing without calculating if it's safe. You're loving without fear. You're living without constantly looking over your shoulder. That's freedom. Real freedom. And it started with a single moment. A single choice. A single refusal to accept what generations of women before me had accepted. It started with me standing up from that dinner table, touching my bleeding face and saying, "I'm leaving." Those 2 words changed everything, saved my life, broke the cycle, lit the way for Patricia, for Derek's fiancés, for the daughter who now knows she deserves better. 2 words. I'm leaving. Sometimes that's all it takes. One moment of courage, one decision to choose yourself, one refusal to accept violence as love, and everything changes.